More, we're joined right now by the host of NewsNation's On Balance, our very own Leland Vittert. Leland, thanks for being with us. You know, I remember some of your first communication regarding this conflict, and you actually predicted that once Netanyahu called on the destruction of Hamas, that the UN would actually levy those war crime accusations to the Jewish state. And that has happened. I wanted to know your thoughts since some of this conversation has actually come to life.
Sad, but predictable. And I think what you're seeing is the effects of the worldwide pressure on Israel. We're hearing more and more, and it's happening even from the United States. A pretty stunning poll came out that roughly half of Americans between the ages of 18 and 24 say they support Hamas, not Israel, in this conflict. That's of Americans 18 to 24. They don't support the Palestinians. They don't support Palestinian civilians. They support Hamas. So it shows you the kind of international pressure that is coming down on the Israelis to stop this ground invasion or to not have it. And we were seeing that also from the White House as well. Lots of pressure behind the scenes despite their full-throated support. I think the most important news probably of the week is the news that Iranian militias injured 24 American troops. This isn't an attack on Israel. This is an attack on the United States of America by Iran. There's no other way to look at this. And yesterday you had Secretary Blinken at the United Nations saying, hey, we're ready to defend our people. We will not tolerate attacks on our people. But yet there were attacks on our people. The Pentagon covered it up, and the United States didn't respond. It's hard to understand why Iran would take us seriously.
Yeah. And again, Iran not even speaking a word except for what they've said before, wanting to kiss the hand of the ones who planned that brutal attack on October 7th. In terms of this Hamas tactic to actually infiltrate Israel by sea, we saw increased fighting along the northern borders with Lebanon and Syria. But still, the U.S. is there asking Israel for a ceasefire. So has the...
I don't think the U.S. has asked for a ceasefire. You had John Kirby yesterday at the White House podium say a ceasefire would only help Hamas. You had Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar, Democratic members of Congress, demand a ceasefire. And that is telling. A ceasefire only helps Hamas. And Robert's reporting is spot on that the suffering in Gaza continues. One of the things that the UN inside Gaza, their allegiances could perhaps be questionable. But one of the things that they talk about is how there's no fuel. Well, Hamas has 500,000 liters, about 200,000 gallons of fuel inside Gaza. They just won't let the UN have it. They want it for their war effort. Hamas hasn't run out of rockets or out of ammunition, but somehow they've run out of food. So it shows you what their priorities are. And I think the question going forward about this is going to be, and it goes to your original point, Adrienne, who does the world hold responsible for what happens inside Gaza? Hamas runs Gaza. The reason the Americans haven't gotten out of Gaza is because Hamas is holding them there. The reason civilians are dying is because Hamas is using them as human shields. But yet somehow Israel gets blamed for all of this. That's telling.
Do you believe that it's just prevailing thoughts of anti-Semitism? Because as I mentioned earlier, if it was any other group in the world, and we've seen a rise in hate crimes and attacks before this conflict, why is it that Israel's contribution on the world stage is not being considered, especially when you have the UN saying that, you know, this didn't happen in a vacuum?
Look, Israel's always been held to a double standard through all of this. I think what we're seeing is a change in Israeli mentality, certainly from the 4 years I was there. They no longer argue the facts because they realize they're not going to get a fair shake, whether that's because of underlying anti-Semitism or something else, who knows. But they've figured out that they're not. So they're changing their tactics. They're putting out the facts, and they're calling out the double standard. You're now seeing the Israeli Defense Forces spokespeople actively attack the media for some of their reporting, especially the fake reporting about the hospital strike. So you're seeing the Israelis change tactics. You ask if the Israelis are going to get a fair shake. No, they're not. I think what is admirable, though, is that their tactics remain the same, which is that they try hard not to have civilian casualties. Is it perfect? No. This is war. This is conflict. And I think that you rightly point out, Adrienne, this is a war started by Iran and by Hamas. It's very difficult then to take any of their cries about the cost of that war seriously.
Yeah.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find News Nation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.